Within the depths of human psychology lies a truth so counterintuitive that most people live their entire lives without recognizing it. This truth concerns the inverse relationship between your accessibility and your perceived worth, a psychological law as reliable as gravity, yet as invisible as the forces that shape atomic particles. Consider the colleague who responds to emails within minutes versus the one whose thoughtful replies arrive hours later. Which carries more weight? Think about the friend who drops everything at your call versus the one whose time feels precious and deliberate. Which presence commands more respect? The most compelling figures throughout history possessed an almost supernatural understanding of this principle. They wielded absence as others wield presence, silence as others wield words, withdrawal as others wield pursuit. Their influence emanated not from what they gave freely, but from what they deliberately preserved. Carl Jung, master of the human psyche, recognized that consciousness operates according to energetic principles. What he called libido, our fundamental psychological energy, flows like electricity, seeking the path of least resistance. Those who scatter this energy indiscriminately become depleted, while those who concentrate and preserve their essence become magnetic centers of influence. Yet modern conditioning has created a mass delusion. We've been trained to believe that our value lies in perpetual availability, in the frantic distribution of attention and emotional labor to anyone who demands it. This represents perhaps the most subtle form of self-abandonment ever devised, one in which we participate willingly, even enthusiastically. What follows examines the mechanics behind this conditioning, and more importantly, the precise methodology for its dissolution. This knowledge carries a warning. Once these principles are understood and applied, the comfortable illusions that govern most relationships will crumble, revealing psychological dynamics that most prefer to ignore. Human attention operates according to economic principles that few comprehend. Like any finite resource, its value fluctuates based on supply and demand. The person who distributes attention freely and without discrimination renders it worthless in the marketplace of human interaction. Jung's analytical framework reveals that psychic energy functions as the primary currency of all meaningful exchange between conscious beings. This energy, when properly conserved and strategically deployed, creates what we might call psychological gravitas, an inexplicable magnetism that draws others into one's orbit. The conditioning runs deep. From childhood, we learn that worth is demonstrated through immediate responsiveness, through eager satisfaction of others' emotional needs, through perpetual sacrifice of personal boundaries in service of maintaining social harmony. This conditioning serves a dual purpose. It creates a reliable supply of emotional labor while preventing most people from accessing their own inherent power. Consider the individual who responds to every text within minutes, who makes themselves available for every social gathering, who sacrifices their own projects to assist others with theirs. Such a person becomes what psychologists term psychologically transparent, entirely predictable, easily manipulated, and ultimately forgettable. Their constant presence eliminates mystery, and without mystery, there can be no fascination. Take the example of two managers in the same company. One answers every email immediately, stays late to help any colleague, and makes themselves available around the clock. The other responds thoughtfully within reasonable timeframes, maintains clear boundaries about after-hours contact, and chooses their involvements carefully. Which one commands more respect? Which one's opinion carries more weight in meetings? The answer reveals an uncomfortable truth about human psychology. This phenomenon extends beyond mere social dynamics into the deeper structures of psychological attraction. The human mind assigns value through a process of cognitive assessment that prioritizes rarity over abundance. This mechanism evolved as a survival adaptation. Scarce resources demanded attention and protection, while abundant resources could be taken for granted. When applied to interpersonal relationships, this principle reveals why the most memorable individuals are those who maintain an element of unpredictability, who cannot be summoned at will, who preserve something of themselves from the grasping hands of social obligation. The tragedy lies in witnessing intelligent, capable individuals reduce themselves to emotional vending machines, dispensing comfort, validation, and attention to anyone who approaches with the correct social currency. They mistake this self-depletion for virtue, unaware that they are participating in their own psychological diminishment. True availability, the kind that nourishes rather than depletes, emerges from choice, not compulsion, from abundance, not scarcity, from sovereignty, not servitude. The most insidious forms of control operate through the manipulation of availability expectations. Those who understand these dynamics realize that the person who can be relied upon to respond, to accommodate, to prioritize others' needs above their own becomes a predictable resource to be utilized rather than a dynamic force to be respected. This utilization occurs through the establishment of what we might term response conditioning, a psychological training process wherein the individual learns to associate their worth with their willingness to immediately satisfy others' demands for attention, emotional support, or practical assistance. The conditioning is reinforced through intermittent validation, creating an addiction to external approval that ensures continued compliance. Jung's exploration of projection illuminates how this dynamic serves the projector's psychological needs while simultaneously imprisoning the recipient. When a person makes themselves perpetually available, they become a blank screen upon which others project their unresolved emotional needs, their desire for control, their fear of abandonment. The available person becomes not a human being with autonomous needs and desires, but a function, a tool for emotional regulation. The withdrawal of availability threatens this entire system. When the previously available individual begins to establish boundaries, to delay responses, to prioritize their own needs, the manipulator's psychological equilibrium becomes destabilized. They can no longer rely on their emotional vending machine to dispense comfort on demand. This destabilization often triggers increasingly desperate attempts to reestablish control. Escalated emotional manipulation, guilt, anger, the recruitment of others to pressure the individual back into compliance. These reactions serve as confirmation that the relationship was indeed built on utility rather than genuine appreciation. Strategic withdrawal represents more than mere boundary setting. It constitutes a fundamental alchemical transformation of psychological positioning. Through the conscious decision to become selectively unavailable, the individual transmutes from a reactive entity into a creative force, from a responder to external stimuli into an autonomous agent of their own destiny. This transformation operates through several interconnected psychological mechanisms. First, withdrawal creates what we might call the scarcity effect, the sudden absence of a previously reliable resource forces others to recalculate its value. The individual who was once taken for granted becomes noticed through their absence. Their opinions, when finally offered, carry weight precisely because they are no longer freely distributed. Think of it practically. The moment before hitting reply all to that group email or agreeing to that last-minute request. That pause, that gap between stimulus and response, contains the seed of transformation. In that space lies the power to choose rather than react. Second, strategic unavailability forces others to confront their own psychological dependencies. When the reliable source of emotional regulation, validation, or entertainment suddenly becomes unpredictable, the dependent party must either develop internal resources or seek alternative sources of supply. This process often reveals the shallow nature of relationships that were built on functional utility rather than genuine appreciation. The phenomenon also triggers what Jung described as the compensation principle, the psyche's tendency to balance extremes. When faced with unexpected unavailability, others begin to project greater significance onto the withdrawn individual. The absence creates a vacuum that the imagination fills with enhanced attributes, increased mystery, and elevated importance. Consider the dating dynamic. The person who texts back immediately, who rearranges their schedule at a moment's notice, who makes themselves constantly available, often finds their romantic interest waning in their partner. Meanwhile, the individual who maintains their own life, who responds thoughtfully rather than immediately, who preserves their independence, remains intriguing and desirable. Most significantly, withdrawal provides the psychological space necessary for individuation, Jung's term for the process of becoming one's authentic self rather than merely playing assigned social roles. When operating in constant response mode to others' needs and expectations, there is no opportunity to develop genuine self-knowledge or to pursue authentic psychological development. Availability becomes a form of self-abandonment disguised as virtue. The practice of strategic withdrawal requires what we might call psychological courage, the willingness to disappoint others' expectations, to be misunderstood, to be accused of selfishness or coldness. This courage distinguishes those who achieve genuine autonomy from those who remain trapped in patterns of people-pleasing and external validation-seeking. Here's a practical mantra for those moments of guilt. Prioritizing my energy isn't selfish. It's necessary for authenticity. This isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about ensuring that when you do give, it comes from choice rather than compulsion, from abundance rather than depletion. The most profound aspect of this transformation is that it operates through subtraction rather than addition. Rather than adding new behaviors or skills, the individual removes themselves from dynamics that deplete their energy and diminish their sense of self. This removal creates a space for authentic desires, genuine interests, and real relationships to emerge. The process often involves a period of disorientation as the individual learns to navigate social situations without their habitual patterns of over-accommodation. They must develop new ways of relating that honor both their own needs and others' legitimate requests without falling back into patterns of self-sacrifice. The conservation of psychological energy represents one of the most undervalued skills in human development. Most individuals leak energy continuously through unconscious responses to stimuli that deserve no reaction, through engagement with conflicts that serve no constructive purpose, through the maintenance of relationships that provide no genuine nourishment. Jung's energetic model of the psyche suggests that individuals possess a finite quantity of psychological energy that can be invested consciously or squandered unconsciously. Those who learn to direct this energy deliberately rather than allowing it to be dispersed through social pressure become formidable forces in their chosen domains. The practice begins with developing what we might call response awareness, the ability to notice the impulse to react before acting upon it, that moment before typing an angry response to a provocative comment, that pause before agreeing to yet another commitment when your schedule is already overwhelming, that breath before explaining yourself to someone who doesn't deserve an explanation. This creates a gap between stimulus and response, a space of choice that most individuals never develop. Within this gap lies the possibility of true autonomy. Energy conservation also requires the development of internal criteria for determining which situations warrant engagement and which deserve to be ignored. These criteria must be based on authentic values and long-term objectives rather than on social expectations or the desire to avoid temporary discomfort. Ask yourself, does this request align with my priorities? Does this person reciprocate the energy I invest? Does this conversation move me toward my goals or simply drain my resources? Will my involvement here serve my highest good or merely satisfy someone else's convenience? The most challenging aspect of energetic conservation involves resisting the impulse to explain or justify choices to others. The need to rationalize every boundary, every refusal, every moment of unavailability represents a drain on psychological resources that serves primarily to maintain others' comfort rather than to protect one's own well-being. Master practitioners of energetic conservation develop an almost supernatural ability to remain unmoved by emotional manipulation, guilt trips, or social pressure. They understand that other people's emotional states are not their responsibility to manage, and that attempting to regulate others' feelings represents a fundamental violation of psychological boundaries. This mastery extends to the realm of attention management. Rather than allowing their focus to be scattered across multiple simultaneous demands, they learn to direct their attention like a laser beam, concentrating their full presence on chosen activities while remaining genuinely unavailable for everything else. The smartphone provides a perfect example. Instead of checking messages every few minutes, responding immediately to every notification, the energy-conscious individual designates specific times for communication. They turn off their phone without guilt during focused work or personal time. They understand that urgency is often manufactured and that most situations can wait. In professional settings, this might mean not checking emails outside of designated hours, not attending every meeting you're invited to, saying, "Let me think about it," instead of immediately agreeing to new projects. It means understanding that your thoughtful consideration is more valuable than your immediate compliance. The result of consistent energetic conservation is the development of what we might call psychological presence, a quality of being that commands respect and attention without effort. This presence emanates from the knowledge that one's energy is valuable and will not be squandered on unworthy pursuits. People begin to notice when you speak because you don't speak constantly. Your opinions carry weight because you don't offer them indiscriminately. Your time becomes precious because you don't distribute it carelessly. The path of strategic withdrawal inevitably leads through a period of conscious solitude, not the solitude of the rejected or the abandoned, but the chosen solitude of those who have discovered the difference between being alone and being lonely. This distinction marks the difference between psychological maturity and emotional dependency. Chosen solitude serves as the crucible for individuation. When external voices are silenced, when the constant demands for reaction and response are eliminated, the authentic self begins to emerge from beneath layers of social conditioning and people-pleasing behaviors. This emergence cannot occur in the presence of others' expectations and projections. The quality of this solitude differs fundamentally from isolation or withdrawal born of fear. It represents a positive choice to prioritize internal development over external validation, to value self-knowledge over social approval, to pursue genuine interests rather than activities designed to maintain others' comfort. During this period, the individual often experiences what Jung termed the confrontation with the shadow, an encounter with aspects of themselves that were previously hidden beneath social masks. This confrontation, while uncomfortable, is necessary for authentic development. It reveals both personal limitations and untapped potentials that could never be accessed while constantly responding to external demands. You might find yourself questioning relationships you've maintained out of habit rather than affection, reconsidering commitments made from obligation rather than enthusiasm, discovering interests and passions that were buried beneath years of accommodating others' preferences and expectations. This process is not always comfortable. There will be moments of doubt, guilt, even fear. Am I being too selfish? Am I pushing people away? What if I end up alone? These questions are natural and necessary. They represent the death throes of old patterns that no longer serve your highest good. The metamorphosis that occurs through conscious solitude produces an individual who no longer requires external validation for their sense of worth, who can appreciate others without needing their approval, who can offer genuine gifts from a place of abundance rather than desperate need. This transformation fundamentally alters the individual's relationship to all future interactions. They approach relationships from a position of choice rather than need, offering their presence as a gift rather than a guarantee, maintaining their autonomy even within intimate connections. The paradox of this solitude is that it often makes the individual more attractive to others, not less. The self-possessed person who does not need others becomes someone others want to be around. Their independence creates a magnetic quality that desperate availability never achieves. True connection becomes possible only when it emerges from wholeness rather than neediness, from choice rather than compulsion, from sovereignty rather than desperation. The mastery of strategic unavailability represents more than a social strategy. It constitutes a fundamental shift in consciousness, from reactivity to sovereignty, from external orientation to internal authority, from psychological dependency to authentic autonomy. Those who achieve this mastery discover that their relationships improve, not despite their boundaries, but because of them. When interactions occur by choice rather than obligation, when attention is given freely rather than extracted through manipulation, when presence is offered rather than demanded, the quality of human connection reaches depths impossible through forced availability. The sovereign individual no longer fears disapproval because their sense of worth derives from internal sources rather than external validation. They no longer feel compelled to explain their choices because they recognize that their energy belongs to them alone. They no longer sacrifice their well-being to maintain others' comfort, because they understand that such sacrifice serves no one's highest good. This sovereignty extends beyond personal relationships into all domains of life. In professional settings, the strategically unavailable individual commands respect and receives opportunities that constantly available people never access. Their thoughtful responses carry more weight than others' immediate reactions. Their time becomes valuable because they treat it as valuable. In creative pursuits, they produce work that reflects authentic vision rather than market demands. In spiritual development, they access depths of self-knowledge that remain forever hidden from those who never stop responding to external stimuli. The path requires courage, wisdom, and an unwavering commitment to personal truth over social conformity. There will be those who attempt to guilt you back into old patterns, who accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, of being selfish. These accusations reveal more about their dependency on your availability than about any fault in your transformation. Yet for those who possess the strength to walk this path, the rewards extend far beyond improved relationships or enhanced status. They gain something far more precious: ownership of their own life, their own energy, their own destiny. The most profound discovery is that when you stop being available to everyone, you become truly available to those who matter. When you stop giving your energy freely, it becomes a gift worth receiving. When you stop explaining yourself, you start commanding respect. This is not the cold withdrawal of the wounded or the calculated manipulation of the narcissist. This is the conscious choice of the psychologically mature individual who understands that their presence is a gift, not a guarantee. Their energy is finite, not infinite. Their time is precious, not disposable. The choice, as always, remains yours. Continue dispersing yourself across the demands of others, or begin the process of gathering your energy, your attention, your life force back into your own hands. Stop being available for everything and discover what it means to be truly valuable to those who deserve your presence. The transformation begins the moment you choose yourself.